Part 1, The Last Message. It was 9:42 p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday when Emily Carter sent her best friend a message that would soon become one of the most infamous pieces of evidence in an unsolved disappearance. It wasn't a desperate plea for help. It wasn't a long confession. It wasn't even words. It was a single black circle emoji, new moon. Just 2 minutes later, her phone went dark. By the time police arrived at her small townhouse in Ridgewood, Oregon, Emily was gone. No sign of forced entry, no overturned furniture, and eerily, no trace of a struggle. The only sound inside was the faint hum of her refrigerator, and the only thing out of place was her phone, lying face down on the kitchen counter, its screen still glowing faintly before going completely black. The town that wasn't ready. Ridgewood was a kind of quiet, postcard-perfect town that boasted more antique shops than crime scenes. People left their doors unlocked. The loudest thing you might hear after dark was the whistle of the midnight train or the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. That peace shattered the morning after Emily's disappearance, when police cars lined the streets and drones buzzed over the wooded hills behind her home. The local paper's headline read, "26-year-old Ridgewood woman missing. Last message baffles investigators." The case exploded on social media. The hashtag Black Moon case began trending worldwide. Reddit threads dissected her last online activity minute by minute. TikTok conspiracy accounts spun wild theories. Was the emoji a secret distress signal? A code only certain people would understand? Or something much, much darker? The life she left behind. Emily Carter wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She was an aspiring freelance photographer who split her time between shooting wedding portraits and working part-time at a small coffee shop on Main Street. Friends describe her as creative, private, and a little mysterious. Someone who loved cryptic puzzles and late-night drives to nowhere. She had recently moved into her Ridgewood townhouse after ending a long-term relationship. By all accounts, Emily was rebuilding her life. But the more police dug, the more cracks they found in her picture-perfect image. The first 24 hours, Detective Sarah Linden and Mark Hollis were assigned the case. Both seasoned, both skeptical of social media hype, they approached the emoji clue with caution. "We don't solve cases based on TikTok theories," Hollis told reporters. "We solve them based on evidence." Evidence, however, was painfully scarce. No fingerprints besides Emily's and her landlord's. No signs of forced entry. Surveillance cameras in the area had mysteriously stopped recording between 9:40 and 10:15 p.m., the exact window of her disappearance. The only real lead? A neighbor's security camera, which captured the shadowy silhouette of a man standing across the street from Emily's house at 9:44 p.m. The footage was grainy. His face was hidden by the brim of a baseball cap. And that's when police made their first chilling discovery. Emily's camera, her prized Nikon, was missing from her home. Chapter 2, The Camera That Wasn't There. Detective Sarah Linden walked the length of Emily's living room twice, her eyes scanning the walls. The furniture was minimal, a couch, a bookshelf, a small desk, but the walls were lined with frames. Black and white photographs of empty streets, abandoned barns, and fog-choked forests. It was obvious Emily had an eye for the eerie, but something about the display bothered Linden. She turned to Emily's best friend, Rachel Morris, who sat stiffly on the couch, a mug of untouched tea in her hands. "Rachel," Linden asked, "do you remember Emily keeping her camera here at home?" "Always." She called it her baby. She wouldn't go anywhere without it. But the Nikon was nowhere to be found. Its usual resting place, a neat little spot on the desk by the window, was empty, except for a faint outline where the base of the camera had gathered dust. If Emily had taken it with her, why had she left her phone behind? And if she didn't take it, where was it now? The last known movements. Detective Hollis began piecing together Emily's final hours from digital records. 5:32 p.m. Emily left her shift at Main Street Coffee, seen laughing with co-worker Tyler Grant as she stepped outside. 6:04 p.m. She stopped at Ridgewood Market, purchasing milk, bread, and a pack of AA batteries. 6:17 p.m. Credit card record shows a payment to Night Owl Gas, 2 miles from her house. 7:03 p.m. Her laptop was last active, browsing an online photography forum. 9:42 p.m. sent the new moon emoji to Rachel. 9:44 p.m. Unidentified man spotted across the street. 9:46 p.m. Phone goes offline. That timeline left 2 unexplained hours between 7:03 and 9:42. The first crack in the alibi. The man in the security footage quickly became the focus. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, showing residents a still image. Most shrugged and said they didn't recognize him. One man, however, paused. Robert Kane, a retired police officer, squinted at the photo. Looks a lot like Evan Morris, he said slowly. Rachel's brother. Haven't seen him in years. Rachel, still reeling from Emily's disappearance, denied it. Evan's in Portland. We haven't spoken in months. But phone records told a different story. Evan had called Emily 3 times a week before she vanished. The social media storm. By the second day, the internet had already turned the new moon emoji into a symbol of danger. TikTok users posted videos explaining it as a black moon code, supposedly used by certain online communities to signal being followed or watched. Reddit threads dug into Emily's photography, pointing out that several of her pictures featured shadowy figures in the background. Figures had gone unnoticed until now. Detective Linden had to admit it. The photos were unsettling. In one, taken in a foggy forest, a man's outline stood among the trees, barely visible, but undeniably there. The timestamp? 3 weeks before Emily vanished. And then came the first real break in the case. At 3:12 a.m. on the third night of the investigation, an anonymous email arrived in the Ridgewood police inbox. It had no text, just an attachment. It was a single photograph. Emily, wide-eyed, sitting in the driver's seat of her car, her camera strap around her neck. Her phone, the same one found in her kitchen, sitting in her lap. The timestamp on the image? 9:43 p.m., exactly 1 minute after she sent the emoji. Chapter 3. The photo nobody should have taken. The photograph was unlike anything Detective Sarah Linden had seen in her career. It wasn't just the timing, exactly 1 minute after Emily's final message. It was a perspective. The image was taken from inside the passenger seat, angled toward her. Whoever took it had been sitting right next to Emily when it was captured. Her expression wasn't one of fear, but of sharp awareness. Her gaze was fixed on something beyond the windshield, as if she had just spotted something in the darkness ahead. The street outside was unlit, but faint outlines of trees suggested it wasn't in Ridgewood's main streets. The metadata problem. Hollis had the department's cybercrime analyst, Maya Choi, run the metadata. Maya frowned as lines of code scrolled across her monitor. "This is weird," she muttered. "The GPS data is broken. It says the photo was taken at 0.0000 latitude, 0.0000 longitude. Middle of the ocean?" Hollis guessed. No, that's what happens when location data is stripped on purpose. Even stranger, the camera model listed wasn't Emily's Nikon. It was a different DSLR entirely, one she didn't own. Rachel cracks. When shown the photo, Rachel's hands trembled. That's her, but she's not scared, Her voice broke. Linden pressed gently. "Rachel, what was Emily doing the last few weeks? Anything unusual?" Rachel hesitated before admitting something she hadn't told them. She thought someone was following her. Not every day, just sometimes when she was driving home. She said she'd see the same black SUV in her rear-view mirror, always keeping just far enough back. And then Rachel whispered something that made both detectives pause. She thought it might be connected to a photo shoot she did last month, one she didn't tell anyone about. The forest job. 2 weeks before she vanished, Emily had been hired by an anonymous client through an online ad to photograph an abandoned property on the edge of Ridgewood's National Forest. The job paid $500 cash, no questions asked. Rachel said Emily sent her a pin to the location, but deleted it afterward because the place gave her the creeps. Maya dug into Emily's old texts and recovered a fragment of the pin's coordinates. It was enough to map to a stretch of unmarked dirt road deep in the woods, miles from cell service. The SUV appears again. While canvassing near the forest entrance, Linden spotted a trail cam mounted to a tree. It belonged to a hunter named Gary Pollard, who agreed to let them pull the footage. The night Emily vanished, at 10:02 p.m., a black SUV with tinted windows drove down that unmarked dirt road. 2 minutes later, it drove back out. Lyndon froze the frame. A pale hand rested on the passenger side window. The shape was unmistakable. The camera strap dangling around the wrist. The first whisper. That night, as Lyndon reviewed the footage in the empty police station, the department's phone rang. She answered. Nothing but static. Then a voice. Female. Soft. Almost whispering. You're looking in the wrong place. Before she could respond, the line went dead. The caller ID? Emily Carter's number. Chapter 4. The call from the missing. Detective Lyndon didn't move at first. She just stared at the silent receiver, her knuckles white around the cord. Emily's number had been disconnected the morning after she vanished. Hollis had personally logged the phone into evidence. So how was it calling her now? She yanked the call log from the phone's internal memory and printed it. The number was exactly the same, down to the last digit. But the signal trace from the telecom provider led not to Ridgewood, not even Oregon, but to a cell tower in northern Nevada, the cold case link. That tower meant something to Hollis. 7 years earlier, a case had crossed his desk. A missing college student named Lena Torres who disappeared after reporting a strange man photographing her in the woods near Reno. The only evidence in Lena's case? A single blurry photo taken from inside her car by someone in the passenger seat. Lena was never found. And the last ping from her phone? The exact same Nevada cell tower. The SUV owner. Maya traced the black SUV's plates from the trail cam footage. The numbers were partial, but enough to pull up a short list of possible matches. One name jumped out. Evan Morris, Rachel's brother. He had recently traded in a silver sedan for the SUV, a purchase made 2 weeks before Emily vanished. When Lyndon and Hollis visited his Portland address, the SUV was parked in the driveway. The windows were spotless, the tires new, and the interior oddly devoid of personal items. Evan denied knowing Emily beyond being his sister's friend, and claimed he hadn't been to Ridgewood in years. The scratch on the lens. While Hollis distracted Evan with casual questioning, Lyndon peeked into back seat and noticed something wedged between the cushions, a plastic lens cap with a long diagonal scratch across it. Rachel later confirmed Emily's Nikon lens cap had the exact same mark, the result of her dropping it during a wedding shoot. But the real problem? The cap was clean. Too clean, like it had been wiped down. Another whisper. 2 nights later, Lyndon's desk phone rang again. She put it on speaker this time. The same static hissed. Then the same female voice whispered, "Don't trust the photos." Before Lyndon could ask anything, the call ended. This time, Maya traced it instantly, not to Nevada, but to a disused payphone in an abandoned gas station half a mile from Forest Road where the SUV was seen. The decision, they had to search the forest site connected to Emily's mysterious photo job. Lyndon, Hollis, and a small team set out before dawn, hoping to catch whoever might return there. The dirt road was barely wide enough for a single vehicle. It twisted into dense pine, cutting off all cell service. At the end, it opened into a clearing with the remains of an old hunting cabin. Roof half collapsed, door hanging loose. Inside was the scent of mildew and rot. On the floor, beneath a broken window, lay a single photograph. It showed Emily, but younger, standing in front of a different cabin. And in the background, just visible in the shadows, was Lena Torres. The detectives exchanged a glance. This wasn't just Emily's case anymore. Chapter 5, The Cabin in the Pines. The photograph was damp, the corners curling, but the image was clear. Emily, maybe 19, stood with one hand on her hip, squinting against sunlight. Behind her, Lena Torres smiled faintly, as if caught off guard. The strangest detail wasn't the women. It was the background. The cabin they stood in front of was not the one they were standing inside now. The second structure. Hollis scanned the tree line. If this is the wrong cabin, where's the right one? The team fanned out, searching the clearing. It was rookie officer Ben Kirby who found it, half hidden behind a wall of tangled undergrowth, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. The second cabin was smaller, windowless, and locked with a rusted chain. When Lyndon rattled it, something shifted inside. Not a creak, not wind. A deliberate sound, like a footstep, breaking the lock. Protocol said they should get a warrant. Instinct said they shouldn't wait. Lyndon chose instinct. Hollis cut the chain with bolt cutters, and the door swung inward on a wave of stale, suffocating air. The interior was lit by a single bulb dangling from a wire. Against the far wall were photographs, dozens of them, pinned in neat rows. All women, all taken from inside vehicles. Emily's face appeared in at least 4, Lena in 3, and others, strangers, all staring out from passenger seats with the same wide, watchful eyes. The name that shouldn't exist. In the corner sat a battered metal filing cabinet. Inside were manila folders labeled only with dates. Hollis pulled the oldest one, 1997. Inside, along with grainy Polaroids, was a business card. Midnight Sun Photography, Vance Hollis. Lyndon froze. Mark. Hollis stared at the card like it might vanish. That's my father's name. The sound in the woods. Before they could process, a low engine hum drifted in from outside. Lyndon darted to the window slit. The black SUV was creeping up the dirt road. The vehicle stopped just short of the clearing. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, backlit by the pale morning light. It wasn't Evan Morris. It was an older man in a dark coat, moving with slow, deliberate steps, carrying Emily's Nikon camera in one hand. The final second, Lyndon reached for her radio. Static, no signal. The man lifted the camera to his face and pointed directly at the cabin window. Directly at her. The shutter clicked. The bulb inside the cabin flickered once, twice, and went out. In the pitch black, a voice, the same voice on the phone calls, whispered right behind her ear. "You're next." To be continued in Part 2. Part 2, the man behind the lens. The darkness inside the cabin was absolute. Lyndon's hand went instinctively to her flashlight. But before she could switch it on, Hollis's voice cut through the black. "Sarah, he's gone." When the bulb flickered back to life, the SUV was no longer outside. The only evidence it had ever been there was a faint track of tire marks in the dirt, and a single photograph lying on the cabin's threshold. It was a fresh print, still warm. The photo in the doorway. The image showed Lyndon, framed through the cabin window, to seconds earlier, her face pale in the morning light. The vantage point was impossible. It had been taken from inside the cabin while she had been looking out. Hollis's father. They didn't speak of the business card until they were back at the station. The folder sealed in an evidence bag. Hollis paced the length of the room. "My father, Vance Hollis, died in '05. He was a photographer, sure, but he did weddings, portraits. Not this." Lyndon wasn't convinced. "Mark, that cabin's been there for decades. That folder dated 1997. That's your dad's name. We can't ignore it." Hollis shook his head. "He walked out on us when I was a kid. I don't know what he did after, but if he's connected to this." He trailed off. The pattern emerges. Maya began cross-referencing the photographs in the cabin with missing persons databases. Within an hour, she found 6 matches spanning 28 years. Different ages, backgrounds, and cities, but always the same MO. Last seen driving alone. Last contact was a brief, unexplained phone call or cryptic message. No trace afterward. Every case was cold. Every photo, when enhanced, revealed the faint outline of the same man in the driver's seat. The name Midnight Sun, the phrase on the business card, Midnight Sun Photography, rang a bell for Lyndon. A search turned up an obscure 1980s magazine ad for adventurous, intimate photo sessions, all shot on location in remote outdoor settings. The photographer's face was never shown, only the tagline beneath every image. "We capture your last perfect moment." Rachel breaks her silence. That night, Rachel came to the station, pale and shaking. She clutched an old envelope, saying she'd been too scared to share it before. Inside were 5 photographs Emily had mailed her a month before disappearing. They were all self-portraits, taken in different locations: a gas station, a wooded trail, a diner parking lot. But in every one, a dark figure appeared in the far background. Rachel's voice cracked. She told me, if anything ever happened, these photos would tell me who did it. Back to the forest. Lyndon and Hollis returned to the second cabin, this time with backup. But when they arrived, it was empty. The photographs were gone. The filing cabinet drawers pulled out and dumped. On the floor in the dust where the cabinet had stood was a small Polaroid camera, and beside it, a photograph that hadn't been there before. It was of Hollis, standing at his father's grave. Chapter 6, The Grave That Wasn't. The photograph of Hollis at his father's grave was crisp, almost impossibly so. Every grain of moss on the headstone, every crease in Hollis's jacket. But Lyndon knew the part that mattered most. This picture had never been taken. It wasn't a reprint. It wasn't pulled from an old album. This was new, the cemetery visit. The next morning, Hollis and Lyndon drove to Fairview Cemetery, where Vance Hollis was buried. The winter air was sharp, the sky overcast. The grave was exactly as it had been for nearly 20 years. Simple granite marker, overgrown grass. But when Hollis knelt to touch the earth, his hands sank deeper than expected. Lyndon grabbed a stick and scraped at the soil. It gave way too easily. A maintenance worker, confused by their interest, finally admitted something. That plot was disturbed about 5 months ago. We thought it was a family request. No one from the city checked. When Hollis demanded to see the paperwork, there was none. Empty ground. With a court order, they had the grave opened. There was no coffin, no remains. The client list. Back at the station, Maya called them in. She'd been running searches on Midnight Sun photography in old classified archives and stumbled on something. A scanned ledger from a seized storage unit in Idaho, tied to a fraud investigation that contained a client list. The handwriting matched the notes from the folders in the cabin. Beside each name was a date and a location. Every single one lined up with a disappearance. The final entry? Emily Carter, Ridgewood, or October 17th, 2025, the Interstate Trail. The next 3 entries before Emily's name had locations across Nevada, Utah, and Montana. When they cross-checked, all 3 matched missing women in the last 18 months. Each last seen at rural rest stops or gas stations. Each case unsolved. The Nevada name chilled them, Lena Torres. Her date, August 11th, 2018. Her location, the same coordinates where Emily's call had been traced. Rachel's admission. Rachel came to the station again that night, this time in tears. She confessed she'd lied about when she last saw her brother Evan. 2 weeks before Emily vanished, he had shown up at her apartment with Vance Hollis, alive. He looked older, rougher, but it was him. Mark, I swear to God. He said they were working a job and needed a place to crash. I told them no. Evan said Emily was perfect for it. Hollis's jaw tightened. Perfect for what? Rachel only shook her head, sobbing. The motel lead. A receipt in Rachel's trash led them to a roadside motel outside Ridgewood. The manager confirmed that Evan Morris and an older man named Vance had stayed there 2 nights before Emily disappeared. They'd paid cash and left in the middle of the night. When Lyndon asked if they'd left anything behind, the manager produced a plain envelope he'd been meaning to throw away. Inside were contact sheets, rows of tiny proof-size photographs. Every image was of women, sitting in cars, their expressions caught between alertness and fear. The last image in the last row was Emily, and in the driver's seat beside her was Hollis's father. Chapter 7, The Road Out of Ridgewood. The contact sheet sat on the table between Lyndon and Hollis like a live wire. Hollis's father wasn't just alive. He was behind the wheel in Emily's last known photograph. Lyndon leaned back, her voice steady but edged with urgency. We need to find out where they went after that motel. This isn't staying local anymore. The gas station sightings. Maya pulled surveillance from every gas station along the 2 main highways leaving Ridgewood. At 4:17 a.m., 2 days before Emily disappeared, a black SUV matching Evans pulled into a small station near Crescent Pass. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Evan pumping gas, Vance leaning against the SUV, and Emily in passenger seat, her hands visible against the glass. She wasn't bound. She wasn't trying to escape. She was just watching. The Crescent Pass turnoff. The station clerk, when questioned, remembered them, mostly because the older man had asked for directions to the Old Canyon Road. That road led to almost nothing but hunting cabins and abandoned mine shafts. And one more thing, about 10 miles down, it split toward a weathered farmhouse known locally as the Red Hollow Place, a property abandoned after a fire 15 years ago. Crossing the line, because the road straddled the state border, they had to coordinate with Nevada authorities. Sheriff Clay Renner, who'd worked Lena Torres's case, agreed to meet them. When he saw Vance Hollis's face in the photo, his reaction was immediate. I've seen him, or someone like him, always in connection with weird disappearances along the interstate. We called him the driver. Renner explained that the driver was a ghost in multiple cases, always last seen with women who later vanished, always in rural, hard-to-track locations. The safe house. Following Renner's lead, they checked an old foreclosed property 20 miles from Red Hollow Place. Inside was a makeshift darkroom, trays of chemicals, drying lines with photographs clipped in rows, all showing recent dates. In the far corner was a stack of labeled envelopes, each bearing a woman's name and a date. Emily's envelope was there, empty. Beneath it, however, was one labeled Lena Torres. Inside was a single Polaroid. Lena, alive, sitting in the same passenger seat Emily had been in. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago. The implication. Lyndon's hands tightened on the photograph. If Lena had been missing for 7 years but was alive just 14 days ago, then Emily might still be alive too. But the dates were closing in. Every woman in the records disappeared. And within exactly 30 days, they were never seen again. Emily had been gone 22. The warning. As they left the safe house, Lyndon's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photograph of her and Hollis standing in the darkroom just moments earlier. The caption read, "Last perfect moment." Chapter 9. The Black SUV. Detective Sarah Holt wasn't prone to paranoia. She'd seen enough real monsters in her decade on the force to avoid chasing ghosts. But as she pulled away from the Carter home that night, she couldn't shake the image of the black SUV idling across the street. Same tinted windows, same custom rims, the same one witnesses reported in Emily's neighborhood the night she vanished. It eased away the moment she started toward it. No plate she could catch. No sound but the low growl of the engine as it turned the corner. She logged the sighting in her notes. But she didn't tell Emily's mother. Not yet. Chapter 10. The Deleted Folder. While Sarah chased shadows in the streets, cyberforensics expert David Tran was chasing shadows online. Emily's laptop had been frustratingly ordinary. School files, travel photos, playlists. No suspicious apps. No obvious trail. Until David dug deeper. A folder hidden within a hidden folder, only visible after bypassing 3 layers of encryption. Inside, 67 images and video clips, all time-stamped in the weeks before Emily vanished. Some were screenshots of chat logs. The usernames weren't familiar, but the tone was wrong, aggressive, cryptic, laced with inside jokes about midnight meetings and getting clean before the drop. Others were photos taken from inside a car, blurry shots of rural roads, wooded clearings, and in one frame, a gloved hand gripping the steering wheel. The last file was a 7-second audio clip. A man's voice low and sharp. "You have 24 hours, or they'll come for you first." David forwarded everything to Sarah. Chapter 11. The pattern emerges. When Sarah compared the screenshots to known cases, a sick realization settled in her gut. 3 other missing women, all within a 50-mile radius, had been last seen days after sending cryptic messages or symbols to friends. A sun emoji, a lock emoji, a droplet emoji, all had been brushed off as coincidences. Until now, the new moon Emily sent might not have been random. It might have been a code. Chapter 12, the cafe meeting. Sarah arranged to meet Chloe, Emily's best friend and the recipient of the moon emoji, at a quiet cafe. Chloe looked exhausted. Mascara smudge, hands trembling around her cup. She told me once if I ever got a moon from her, it meant she was in trouble but couldn't talk. I thought it was a joke. God, Sarah, I didn't take it seriously. When asked why Emily would think she'd need a secret code, Chloe hesitated. She was scared, not of one person, of something bigger. She said people were always watching, and that if she got too close to figuring something out, they'd make her disappear. Chapter 13, The Knock at Midnight. At 12:17 a.m., Sarah was awoken by a knock at her apartment door. Not the loud, frantic pounding of someone in distress, but slow, deliberate knocks. 3, pause 3, pause 3. She reached for her service weapon and peered through the peephole. No one. Only a small black envelope taped to the door. Inside was a single photo. Emily, sitting in the passenger seat of a car, eyes wide, moon emoji drawn on the window, beside her in condensation. No date, no location, and written across the back, in thick black marker, "You're already too late." Conclusion, Part 2. Detective Ramirez stood at the edge of Willow Creek as the mist rolled in, curling around the trees like the smoke from a long-forgotten fire. He stared at the old footbridge, now cordoned off with fresh crime scene tape, where hours earlier the forensics team had uncovered something no one had expected. The soil beneath the rotting planks had been disturbed recently, and buried just 6 inches deep, wrapped in a faded black hoodie, was Emily Carter's phone. Not her new one, the one her parents recognized from 3 years ago, the one she'd reported stolen the year before her disappearance. The device was in perfect condition, too clean for something that had supposedly been left outdoors for weeks. And when the forensics team powered it up, they found one file, a single unlabeled video that autoplayed the moment it turned on. The shaky footage showed Emily in a dimly lit room. Her voice was trembling, almost whispering. "If you're watching this, it means they found me again. Don't trust." The video cut out. Ramirez's pulse quickened. There was no timestamp, no metadata, no way to know when it had been recorded. And yet, something about the shadows in the background, the outline of a chair, a broken window, looked familiar. He realized with a sick twist in his stomach. It was the same room from the photo taken of her the night she disappeared. As night fell, Emily's parents were escorted to a safe location, but the air was heavy with more than just grief. The new moon emoji she had sent wasn't random. It matched a series of messages sent to 3 other missing persons in the past 5 years. Only one of those people had ever been found, and that person was buried in the Willow Creek Cemetery, under a headstone with no name. Ramirez closed his notebook, watching the fog swallow the bridge. The phone was evidence. The video was a warning. But the most haunting part? The final frame of the clip, just before it cut, showed Emily's lips forming one word, and Ramirez was certain it was his own name. The end.